What's good? What's good? What's good, family? Welcome to you. Already know what it is. This is the greatest podcast on your social media page. It's that time again with the Black and the Bold podcast. Listen, you already know when you're here, you're going to hear some thought provoking, some gut wrenching stuff, and even, as always, some funny tear-jerking content because you know your boy gets better and better as the week goes by and by. But listen, I can't take all the glory for myself. I got to start it right. I'm the bold, brother Black. Let's start the thing all right, brother. How you doing tonight?
Hey, doing well, doing well. Appreciate it. Dwayne Johnson, the black of this counterpart going on this evening. Hailing out of Valdosta, Georgia, repping Georgia Tech, repping Lowndes High School here in Valdosta, and repping University of Maryland for the grad degree as well. And tonight, especially repping Bridge Builder Education and Investments. So just to let everybody know that we are happy to have you on this evening. We're going to get into some more serious conversation. It seems political conversation tonight. And so I'm definitely looking forward to this. Some good discussion to swing our way and see what the Black and the Bold have to say about some of these topics. At the same time, from a family point of view, I guess, not much is going on. We've had our spring break this past week, and got a chance to see my boy Bold over there, and so that was a good surprise.
Oh yeah.
And other than that, man, it's just always training mode, man. Always something going on. So track, business. The show didn't stop just because it was spring break. So that's how we did it on this end.
Yeah, man. Glad to hear, man. Absolutely, this weekend was. I think it was therapeutic. You know how we do, man. We always enjoy each other's company and the family. Really enjoyed that. But yeah, man, our weekend has been great. You know, still grinding as well. You know, still trying to make, you know, moves in any way possible. Have actually been trying to educate myself a lot on different topics. So just taking out some time, you know, to feed the brain and the spirit. So yeah, man, been doing good. The kids are doing well. We're getting closer and closer to graduation, man. It's we've got one more month, a month and about 2 weeks. So you know, the young junior will be graduating. So definitely looking forward to that. And
Man,
yeah, man, it's 18 years has flown by, man. It's been a journey. It's been a learning experience, but glad he made it to this, you know, first milestone. You know, with many more to come. So you know, just trying to keep it in the road, man, and stay positive. You know how that goes, man. So I'm definitely excited. I'm more excited with the fact that, you know, we got something to talk about that I think it's going to be a good conversation. I think it's going to really give us something really good to talk about, to you know, to think about as we end the live and continue to, you know, kind of pursue knowledge and understanding with the matter because it's a big deal. So I'm not going to spoil, you know, I'm not going to spoil it all, but I'm glad to have everybody on with us. Thank you all so much for, you know, tapping in, whether you're on Facebook, whether you're on YouTube. We appreciate your support. And while you're here, go ahead and hit the like button, hit the share button, and also hit the subscribe button if you are watching, rather on Facebook or YouTube. Either one of them, we need your support wherever you are. Brother, what you got, man? What you got? I mean, we got so much to talk about. Beautiful is out tonight traveling, so we definitely send our prayers of for her as she's journeying along. So y'all keep her in your prayers. But we're gonna represent for sis while she out. But what you got, brother? What's the deal? Where should we even start with this thing? Where should we even, you know, put that shovel in the ground? That's what we talk about, man.
So let's just start off with the video. All right. This is a brother, you know, speaking on actually, I guess, a Kansas teacher says that 5-year-olds need to be taught the LGBTQ agenda. So let's just get right into it for you all to hear, and at the same time, you know, we'll see where this goes.
All right.
All right, hold on.
And the research says that there is no age too young to talk about pretty much anything. If they know about it, they're ready to learn about it. Once they're exposed to it, and social media is going to do it, right? I know some kindergartners in the school with cell phones. Mine had a cell phone. And so they get access to information. They can learn quickly. The world is teaching them faster than probably you are. They're students as early as kindergarten who are identifying as non-gender conforming, non-binary, that transgender. And so because they're in our school, they're in our classrooms, then that becomes a responsibility on the adults to say, okay, I have a student who identifies this way. And so it's my responsibility to make sure the classroom is inviting to this. And the research says that there is no age too young to talk about pretty much anything. If they know about it, they're ready to learn about it. Once they're exposed to it, and social media is going to do it, right? I know some kindergartners in the school with cell phones. Mine had a cell phone.
All right, so that's basically where we are. It seems in summation, and you can add your flavor to it, Brother Bold. But I'm just going off of that memory of what he's saying there, is that we live in a time of technology, and quite frankly, I hear the rationalization all the time. The rationale is that because social media is at the fingertips of everyone, including our children. Specifically, he's referencing kindergartners and elementary school students. Because the world is at their fingertips, they're already going to get exposed to this stuff, these topics, I should say. And because of that, they're bringing their enlightenment to the classroom to be considered, as they say now. I'm learning lingo now. They're bringing their terminology into the classroom, where a 5-year-old can say, I'm non-binary, non-gender conforming. And his rationalization is that we being teachers, the teachers have to be able to respond to that and create an environment that is conducive to those non-binary, non-gender conforming students that have claimed this is where they identify. So that's pretty much the groundwork that he offered there. That's where we are. I haven't necessarily come across that environment in our schools. I got a kindergartner right now, and we haven't had to have those conversations. I'll say fortunately, because I don't care what the topic is. When you're talking about gender relations and even sexuality, I think that's the conversation that any parent doesn't necessarily want to have with their 5-year-old or 5 to 10-year-old, if you will. So it's strikingly a little odd being in the space that we're in these days, to where a lot is being accepted, a lot is being rationalized to not necessarily push away the conversation, but introduce it to everybody, whether you want to talk to your kids or not. I mean, I pause right there. What's your take on the summation before we, I guess, get into all the opinion about it?
Well, before we do that, I have another video that I want to share.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's share.
And actually gives us the other side, of this thought process.
Yes.
Let me see if I can share this so we can get this to the family really quickly.
Just bring it up and I'll add it in. That should work. And of course, if you all are joining us, go ahead and drop in the chat, who's on, and welcome yourself to the show. Here's another video that Brother Bold's about to share here, and we're going to get right into that. This is kind of where we are with these topics here. Wow. Okay.
There's plenty of evidence to suggest that when children are exposed, when they're too young, they don't have the cerebral capacity and development at all to withstand all of these images, the over-sexualization, the overexposure to the CRT, these mature concepts. That's why we have ratings to begin with. Y7, G, PG-13R, right? So when they aren't ready for that, the effects go beyond childhood, puberty, these crazy puberty blockers, teen years, young adulthood. It affects their adult romantic relationships and their adult personal relationships. and then it destroys what? The family. And what is critical to a healthy, functioning society and nation is the family. So don't be surprised that we see the family degradation and then the destruction of America. What we have to do as parents is stand up for our kids. You have to protect your children and what they see and what goes into their beautiful minds and their beautiful hearts and their beautiful time together as a family. There's plenty of evidence to suggest that when children are exposed, when they're too young, they don't have the cerebral capacity and development at all to withstand.
That's my take on it. I don't know where all of this originated. But I do know that it's more complicated than algebra in some situations. And that's not me being, facetious or being disrespectful. It's very difficult to follow this new line of thinking when it comes to gender neutrality, sexual orientation, non-binary. I mean, as a matter of fact, I was just looking at some data because I wanted to know what the difference was. What is the difference? What does non-binary mean by definition? What's the difference between, gender and sexuality? And this,
The research
for me to be an individual who has had some education, and I feel like I know a little bit. There's a lot of equations that come to this that would take It's a very complex situation for a kindergarten to really understand. When you look at non-binary, when you look at sexuality, when you look at gender, then you look at gender neutrality, then you look at transgenderism. That's a lot for a 5 and 6 year old to try to conceptualize, to make sense of it, when in fact they don't even know the real usage of their own organ.
Right. Correct.
So to me, I think it's extremely invasive, and I think it's extremely dangerous to do this because it is in fact attacking. It's attacking the foundations of humanity. I mean, this new wave of thinking is really almost a slap in the face, kind of, to me. Now, this is just my opinion. To civilizations of old, like all of a sudden now we have this option that we can just pick and choose where we are as adults and still see the confusion in adults, but expect it to make perfect sense to 5 and 6 year olds.
Yeah,
I'm confused, and that is exactly why, family, we have the topic for tonight. Whose agenda is this? Because with all the people that I know personally, whether professionally, whether through community organizations, whether through churches, whether through friendships, whether through sports, none of them are pushing for this to be a reality for their children. Not one. But yet we have, government officials and politicians and senators and all passing bills to actually support a very small minority of the population. We didn't get this type of governmental support with integration. We didn't get this type of governmental push and support and backing with affirmative action, with equal rights, none of that stuff. But yet they're getting bills passed left and right without us even being able to have a grasp on the real concept of what it is that we're trying to do. Because in my opinion, it's just another opportunity, to confuse the minds, to attack the family, etc., all for the cause of what? So I don't know whose agenda this is. I don't know who's behind pushing all this, who's behind the scenes pushing all this, but I definitely, absolutely, definitely do not agree with it whatsoever. I do not. But I do know that there are a few reasons why, and we'll get into that later, but I'm absolutely against it. Absolutely, totally, emphatically against it. So it's a problem. It's problematic for I think it's more problematic for marginalized people who don't even have the proper education. I think it's problematic for people who are Bible thumpers. I think it's problematic for people who are social activists. I think it causes problems for everybody. But yet the people that are pushing it have no answers outside of "we support you," and that's just not enough for me. So I don't know. We'll get a little bit further down into it, but it's definitely a problem in my opinion. Definitely.
Yeah. Yep. So is it a problem for you?
Yeah. I want to that.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. 1,000%, man. I mean, the way that this is being presented and pushed through, you made up a good point there that we didn't have this greased slide, in affirmative action for, for civil rights. I mean, if you even talk about reparations, slammed in the door. When we try to bring equity to the subject of history, it's slammed away because critical race theory. I mean, wow. And you're talking about opening the conversation to 5-year-olds that, like you said, the other good point that you made, that they don't even understand their own organs at this point. And and it's parental also, all right, because they're coming from somewhere into the school and calling themselves non-gender conforming. I mean, what 5-year-old is able to say that and express that? And if not, then it's the parent on the first day of school likely saying to the teacher that I want my son, daughter, or matter of fact, you don't even say son, daughter, right? I want my child, right? Come on. Like you said, it needs to be complex for everybody.
This is so, and again, we're not throwing off on anybody. We're not, trying to browbeat anybody about their decisions. We're just trying to make sense of it. This is something that has been put into, legal action, that we could actually, suffer, any ramifications, if this particular law was violated. I think it's important for us to understand it all together, because as Kiana says, I think we let some of this out of the psych ward too early. I think they let it out to push an agenda without being able to really roll it out in a way that was palatable. But, excuse me, to be honest, there probably is no palatable way to give this information. So maybe that's why they just rolled it out the way they did.
Yep.
But yeah, to push it, down our throats. But I agree. Like, a lot of this stuff it was very premature, very very unorganized, very dysfunctional in the way it was presented. But at the same time, there's still a lot of issues and problems that exist that I think we're going to really have to dig into to make sense of it all. So there's a lot that goes into it that I think that we're going to have to really understand, study, decipher, put these Lego pieces together to even start a conversation with children, because it's hard enough to have the sex conversation with your child, to now you have to turn around and have a conversation about, well, maybe you don't have to be a boy, you can be a girl or whatever. So I don't know.
Have that conversation, it's more likely for households like ours to have a conversation about someone's friend. And
right.
Them, daddy, mommy, what does that mean? Because Timmy says he's not a boy, but he looks like a boy.
Right.
Or
right. I'm following right along with you. It can become completely confusing, and I don't know. It's so difficult to even have a discussion about it, because it's such a sensitive issue, and when you bring it up with a bunch of questions, you really don't get the answers. You get more of a kickback, or you get more of a defense, and not really a real answer to help us understand. Because if you even look at the definition of gender, if you look at the definition of sexuality, if you look at what non-binary means, by definition, a 5-year-old will not even be able to bring that concept into his into his limited thinking. He's
Right.
not concerned about, matter of fact, non-binary by definition, a term people use whose gender identity doesn't sit comfortably with man or woman. How does a 5 or 6-year-old have that opportunity to make sense of that when it's probably safe to say, again, they don't even know the full parameters of what a boy or girl is?
So I'm just thrown off of just as much as you. So explain, I can't even say explain it to me like I'm a 6-year-old anymore at this point, because a 6-year-old evidently has more knowledge about this than we do at this point in some states. But trying to take this bit by bit. So I don't even know where to start, because when your child is born, and I'm just taking it from, a reading standpoint, they're reading Dr. Seuss, they're reading this, that, and other.
Right.
There is a he, she identification. And even, we can roll back to, matter of fact, let me roll back through after conception. At some point, somebody can help me out. What's the week that you can find out the child's gender? All right. And somebody knows that out there in our land, but I don't even want to take a stab at it. I probably have to look it up. But there's a point to where the doctor can say, you're having a boy, you're having a girl. So is the doctor wrong now? Is the doctor offensive now?
Well, you do know that in certain states that doctor could be probably sued if he continued with that verbiage.
Exactly. So that's where I'm going with this. So 7 weeks. Thank you, Kiana. So at what point do you say, no, I'm going to ignore science, I'm going to ignore human nature, and I'm going to disregard the fact that the child that's inside of the mother either has one or doesn't, and it's a boy or girl? I'm going to ignore that, and I'm going to it's almost disrespectful, to nature, to the unborn child, to just say, I'm going to switch you from being a boy, from being a girl, because I want to teach you that whatever you want to be, you can be.
Right.
When by definition of a human, matter of fact, it goes beyond humanity. So do you call a male cat a gender neutral cat? At some point you've got to lay down every rule of life, biology. That's how far I'm gonna have to take this back, because everything, unless it is actually asexual, there are organisms that are out there, but they are not in our species. So we're now trying to relate to another species by calling ourselves asexual or non-gender conforming, when that is not human nature.
Exactly.
I'm not trying to be that deep about it, but we really need to slow down what's happening, because we're going to start confusing children. We're going to start causing conflicts when there really shouldn't ever be. If you, as a grown, full-fledged kid, adult, young adult, whatever, want to now call yourself Thea instead of Thomas, then that is what it is. Right. But I take real caution and quite offense to where you're taking a 5-year-old and exposing them to identities or non-identities when that's an adult making that call. And now we're creating laws and opening up realms to where it really was never the child's decision in the first place. That person was exposed to that. Right. And we are not correcting them. Right. Quite frankly, my son says, hey, playing around, hey, I'm a girl. No, son, you're actually a boy. It is what it is. Go
ahead.
No, I'm not allowing what is incorrect and improper to take place.
Right. And I agree with you on that. And I agree with you because, again, the second video that I played, where I say I actually attest more to their narrative, because I think it is an attack beyond the child. I think it is attack to the whole family structure down the road.
Yeah.
What other reason why would you want to teach and actually add into the curriculum something that is completely contrary to the entire family structure? You cannot have a family without male, female. That is
Correct.
biological. If we all changed our gender, we would basically put a halt, to the population, to civilization, really. Which is why I think they're going above and beyond to try to help, even with those that have transgendered, still be able to synthetically recreate the purpose of a woman and a man.
Mhm.
I mean, it's absolutely obvious that if that you have to insert science and manipulate the body and hormone therapy and all of that. I mean, there should be no question about what the agenda is. I mean, think about all the things that those men, women, male, females, she, he, them, I don't know, what they all go through in that transition. They even have a shift in their physiology. It's a complete adjustment or shift in their real absolute being, but there's a part of their DNA that they cannot change, and that's
right.
what has already been established. And so it has to be an agenda greater than the children. And you're right, this is something that has been purported by their parents. I know with my daughter, at her school, and I said this before, that at the beginning of the school, they have these little excerpts about certain things that they're going to be teaching in the year. And then one of the questions was, it was alluding to sex, or I can't remember what the word, how they worded it. And I was like, absolutely not. I was like, anytime you teach about anything with sex, take my daughter out the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I said that, because there are a lot of teachers who are transgenders, who are non-binary, so they're going to be even more emphatic about, pushing that agenda and trying to get your child on board with that. When in fact, a lot of the children look at it from their natural instinct and turn it down because it doesn't feel right. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't feel right. It's different. Again, we're not damning anybody or, making you seem like you're an alien and something wrong with you. That's your thing. But again, it's almost like religion. Just because you follow that religion does not mean everybody else around you has to follow your religion. We have a freedom of that. But I don't think this is a freedom. I think this is more of a freedom with a few caveats. Like, you're gonna be free, but you're gonna hear this in school. You know what I'm saying? Like, you still have that free. It's almost like if I was a Muslim, and you say, yeah, you could be a Muslim, but you got to go to the Baptist church 3 times a week to stay Muslim. You know what I'm saying? It's like you're going to give me something complete antithesis of who I am and what I do, just to make it okay for me to be who I am. And that's kind of like what we're dealing with. The children got to go to school now and have to add something else onto the criteria, when a lot of our black children aren't even reading that grade level. So if they're not reading that grade level with Cat in the Hat and help me out with some of these other old books we used to read, Thomas the Train, and
go to my kids' desk right here and pull one out for you. Go dog, go.
Exactly. Yeah, like our kids are struggling. Where's Waldo? Like, our kids are struggling to read the regular criteria and curriculum, and then you're going to add this in. I think it's just going to be more of a distraction, in my opinion. I think it was New York and was it California or Texas or one of those states, a couple states, where elementary schools now already have non-binary bathrooms.
Yeah, you're right. Upstate.
I don't get it. I really don't. And I've read through, some information, and none of it's really giving us a real reason why our children have to have this information especially at such a young age, as they were pushing for laws to be passed in certain states where kids could actually, I think it was something about they could elect for the sex change at a certain age, or and all this stuff. Like it's beyond my realm of thinking. Maybe it doesn't make sense to me because this isn't something that I'm dealing with. Maybe it doesn't make sense to me because it's a new concept that is on such a national stage. I mean, we've all for years known that there have been outliers within our families and communities. We've known that, but a lot of it has been criminalized. And I think now that they're trying to decriminalize this behavior, I think again it's by agenda, because the DSM, I think it was 6 or whichever one that they changed in the 70s, they took out any sexual what they would call disability, or they called it they no longer made it a disability. With the children seekers, I can't say the word. Anybody in that realm, they took it out of that psychology DSM, so they could not criminalize it. And now, 50 years later, they've made a couple of adjustments, but now that same behavior that was criminalized before the 70s is now accepted in mainstream society. That should say something. It should really scream a lot, because I agree with Shamanti. It goes against the law of nature, but they're trying. But again, the powers that be, they definitely think they're above the laws of nature. So it's not surprising at the same time. So I don't know. I don't know, but I mean, how do y'all feel about it, family? I know Shamanti and Kiana has given some context, but I mean, is this something that you all have been speaking of in your families? Is this something that has come up at your family reunions or wedding receptions, or I don't know, picnics or family dinners? I don't know. I mean, is this something that you all are actually having conversations about, or is this something that you all also detest and decline? As far as it being shared with your children, I don't think. Kiana said in caps, no. Again, she's doing nothing but reaffirming what I said earlier. That's something that we do not do in our community. Not on the large scale, not on the public scale.
I mean, I would even say we don't do that culturally. I would even step into that realm. I mean, this has to be, I'm trying to find like where this stuff originates from. And one hit that I'm seeing is, of course, not just alone, but it does reference the Indian culture back as far back as 400 BC to 200 AD. There were individuals that were referenced in ancient Hindu texts that were considered a third gender of community of people who don't identify exclusively as man or woman. So that I mean, that's just where I'm challenging this, where this comes from. And who? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that even Baphomet is androgynous. So this isn't a new concept, but this is something that existed behind closed doors in more of a esoteric type of expression. It was something that they did in secret. But now it's seeming as if it's become more of a public thing. So it's definitely something that the elite that have practiced this for thousands of years want this to become mainstream. And my question is why?
Why?
Because if you look at the Catholic Church in its inception, there was a lot of male on male. There were many. There's some even say that in certain circles, or some of those that were established in the Christian Church, they were absolutely androgynous or same sex. Enlightened, I guess. And so no, it's not a new concept, but it's new because this isn't something that has been pushed on children.
Right. Exactly.
This is something that adults sought after.
That is so agenda-like to put it in the schools and to push it to children. That's, I mean, just like you said, that word of children seekers. I mean, that's something that really borderlines that, so that the guards are let down.
Right. And I think I think that this is going to be a better way to infiltrate generations to come in the DNA of the new age by exposing our children's young minds to this. I mean, they're most impressionable to the age of 7 or 8, and it has been declared that once they reach 7 or 8, a lot of their behaviors don't change. A lot of their thought patterns don't change. It's almost like it's the foundation of who they are. And if you're going to break that thought pattern, it takes a lot of intentional work to do so.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at this point, I think it's going to be incumbent upon the parents to take even a more active role away from school to be educators and to be the ultimate judge and jury when it comes to what our children see, listen to, and regurgitate. So I think it's just a clarion call for us to be better parents than anything else. That if the school wants to do their thing, fine. But we're going to have to be a better parent in our homes in order for us to be really, really vigilant about the future, the mental and psychological future of our children. So
yeah, I think if you want to, I think that's a good segue, to one of these other topics as we get into this, because a lot of that really bleeds over into what we're willing to do as parents with some of these bills that are being passed. And some of them are in relation to what's being taught or not taught within the school systems. I'm trying to get to one I just had.
Yeah, I'm about to pull one up too, because I know one of them was HB1.
Yeah,
was the elimination of free speech zones, which is interesting. If you want me, I can go ahead and jump on HB1.
That one's coming up also. Go ahead.
Yeah, but this is coming from the Current website, The Current, and it's entitled "Georgia House Passes 3 Controversial Education Bills Despite Opposition." One is campus speech. The second limits on teaching racial history, and then parental access to teaching materials heads to the Senate. And so HB1, the elimination of free speech or free speech zones on college campuses, it says it would also limit colleges' ability to prevent speakers on campus. It says the bill says that students, faculty members, and guests should be able to express free speech wherever they want on campus. Now, there's a lot of us on this live that have had the college experience. When we had individuals that were, whether they were Bible thumpers or they were preaching Islam, or whether they were preaching liberalism, or whether they were preaching Satanism, or whatever it was, if you didn't want to hear it, or they were preaching their political agenda, or they were going back and forth, whatever it may have been, when we were on campus, if we didn't want to hear what they were saying, what did we do? We walked away. Right? We walked away. Rather it was in front of the student union or wherever they were, if they began to say something that we didn't agree with and we didn't want to go back and forth with them, we just walked off. Thank you, Kiana. We just walked off. But now, why is it that they feel they have to pass a bill to eliminate free speech zones? This is interesting because I thought free speech was an inalienable right.
Well, I'm with Shamonte here. Is that a lot of us really learned to be liberal in college? She says, how are they trying to take that away? That's part of the college experience. I mean, exactly. That was my first thought. Listening to your intro, there is that you're really being contradicting to the college experience. Is that's where you learn really to find yourself and perhaps find your voice, and also understand that you have a voice on a campus, and all of a sudden now that's being stifled.
Exactly, because that's the problem area for me. Because if you think about it, free speech zones. So are you telling me that in hindsight, you're telling me that you have only allocated zones for free speech, when in fact I thought free speech was a right, right? Is that a part of our right, part of our constitution, part of our bills and our amendments and all this stuff?
So-called First Amendment.
Are we supposed to be? Aren't we supposed to have free speech? So they're already speaking in code. They're trying to eliminate free speech zones. Now there may be some kind of some type of some type of law, or some type of, I wouldn't say law, but there might be some type of language, because it may be a privately owned institution where they may say, okay, well, we will allow you to express free speech, but it can only be in these areas. I get that, but it still, in my opinion, violates. Well, let me put it like this: if you have free speech zones, it's almost as if you are still muffling my voice, because if I wanted to say something in the classroom that was under the free speech amendment, you would still punish or castigate me for exercising my First Amendment right. But then if I go in your free speech zone, you'll say it's okay. Did you catch that? I can't do it in the classroom, but I can do it out in front of the student union. So it's like you're telling me where I can speak. You're telling me where it is I can share my opinion. So if I'm about to have a conversation or discourse with a professor, if I only have free speech zones, I can't have that discourse with the professor in class, because it could go against their policies or whatever, which is kind of what they're doing with the other bills down the road, where where students can't even have the conversation with their teachers. But we're gonna get into that. But did you catch what I was saying there?
Absolutely.
You're right. Kiana called it. It sparks fear. It puts a muzzle on you for you to use the language free speech zones. But now the small places and spaces that you allow us to speak, now you're saying you can't have those either. So you mean to tell me I can go to a college, and if you take away the free speech zones, I'm spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to an institution where I can't even express my own opinion?
So the thing also is that when you look at, it's quite also hypocritical that, you have some right-wing individuals that, used to refer to Obama as communistic, spreading communism and all that stuff. But really, that's what you end up starting moving into with limiting free speech and with the zones, if you will, because that's exactly what China and North Korea do. They actually limit free speech. So what are we really getting into at this point? We are looking more like a communistic nation.
Yeah, there are the U.S. for some odd reason we want to be separate from the East, but at the same time, I think we many times low key want to be like the East.
Exactly.
So that there are a lot of things that we implement on a low key level, which is absolutely the same thing. And it's funny because usually with the lockdowns, when we see it in Asia, when we see it in China, it's almost inevitable it's going to happen here.
Exactly.
Technology, we're gonna get it. It's like we have this
control.
This under the table relationship that we don't want to. It's like we each other jump off, and we don't want to tell nobody else that we're dealing with each other. But it's quite obvious when we're in public. People can see us looking at each other a certain kind of way. Right. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And it gets to that point where it's like, why are you trying to pull the wool over our eyes to make us think that you really don't want to control us when we know you do? You know what I'm saying? So again, this is that hate speech stuff that won't allow us to really, really share our real heart on certain issues. Watch this. I want to read this quote. Representative Josh Bonner out of Fayetteville, Georgia. He's a Republican. He said that this particular bill could provide a platform for hate speech, but the bill's sponsor, Mr. Bonner, said that it is necessary, even though they knew it may create hate speech, just like Kiana said, just like Shamanti said. But the other representative Republican said it's necessary. The cure to overcoming bad ideas is not to limit speech, but it's to increase the amount of speech. Okay, so let's back up. The cure to overcoming bad ideas is not to limit speech. So are you saying when we limit speech, we're actually speaking with bad ideas? Is that what you're referring to? Because who called it a bad idea? Is it the person who wants their agenda pushed? These are questions we should ask. The cure to overcoming bad ideas is not to limit speech, but to increase the amount of speech. Democrats mentioned that the language of the bill contradicts another bill on the floor that deals with educational content. That's the one we're going to talk about later. Today, you will also vote on a bill that limits the speech of our teachers in the K-12 system by banning them from teaching divisive concepts. Representative Jasmine Clark, a Democrat out of Lilburn, Georgia, said, "So now you are being asked in this bill to give individuals who do not pay tuition, who are not affiliated with the college, unrestricted access to teach those divisive concepts to the students." And there you go. People who do not belong to the college, they're not tenured by the college, they're not employed by the college, they're not contractors of the college, they're not students of the college, they're not recipients of any type of aid from the college. Yet, through this bill, they're now given access to come on campus and preach all of this divisive information. So I got to go back to that first comment because this makes more sense. It says the cure to overcoming bad ideas is not to limit speech. If I take that quote right there, Representative Josh Bonner is saying that because we have these traditional ideas, these traditional or these cultural ways or these traditional constructs of our family, those are bad ideas, according to his words. Because he says in order for you to overcome bad ideas, you must increase the amount of speech. But I got to ask you a question. Who's speaking? That's a good question to ask. If you're going to increase the amount of speech, just because you have a mouth don't mean you should be talking. It needs to be certain individuals who can speak in a balanced way to be able to help us understand, to speak to both sides, so we could be an amicable progression. But not this, okay, well, you're limiting my speech, that's a bad idea. So we're going to open up the doors to anybody who doesn't even wear that college t-shirt, who doesn't even have a degree from that school, yet they can come and speak what they want to speak. This is extremely dangerous. It's extremely dangerous because it even involves K through 12 now. We started with colleges. Don't miss it, family. They started talking about colleges, but the Democrat from Lilburn told you that this also affects teachers from K to 12. So now this affects our elementary schools, which is why they allow transgender, non-binary, all of those to come to the school and read to children. You saw that last year, the year before. You remember that? Do you remember that? I think he's frozen. Can you hear me?
I was on mute. I'm sorry. I hear you. Yeah. Sorry, I'm back.
You remember that?
Yes.
So that's how they got in. They got in because this particular bill was already on the floor. And they tested some of that. They tested some of that by allowing them to come in and have all of these, come reading books to children, having these reading things in the library and all that stuff, trying to make it a normal situation because they knew this HB1 was already going to be passed. They knew it was already on the floor, and they knew they had a lot of support. So now K through 12, people who don't even have children in your school or an affiliation with your school can come and speak what they want to speak. And they'll say, and they'll say that's going to help free speech by all of us having a voice. What do you think about that? It seems very diabolical to me.
It's a plan. Goes back to the question, whose agenda?
I don't know.
What all of this means, in summary, and we'll come back to it at the end here, is that really this commands that we need to be very intentional about our involvement, our engagement within the school system. We need to really take a different look at how seriously we take parenting and that relationship with the teacher. I mean, it goes back to even just touching back to the conversation we had with quote unquote Dr. Bell, Brittany Bell, with regard to advocating for your child. This is taking it on a whole nother level to where if you are not advocating for your child now, boy, watch out. So
you're right. You are so right, because this is getting out of hand. And I think it's something that we're going to have to really grab a hold of really quickly, because this thing passed 93 to 62.
Yep, no problem.
Not even close. So
Not
then
even.
we have to look at, so if you're in Georgia,
Mhm.
and this is something that you do not agree with, you need to go on your governmental website and find out who voted for it. And if that individual is in your area, if you don't agree with with their ideals, then you need to make sure that you do something about it with your vote. Make sure you do something about, share that information and expose those who you feel that are not voting in your favor. I don't think this is in our favor. I really don't. I don't think it's in anybody's favor, but who am I? Who am I? But I'm with Brother Black, and I'm with Shamanti. Parent involvement is crucial.
Yeah.
If you have not been involved in your child's life or school or extracurricular activity, this is your opportunity to dive in head first and make it your business to ask questions. Every day I pick my daughter up, I'm asking questions. How was the day? What did you learn? Who did you help? What happened today? Did you learn something new? I'm asking questions. I'm being proactive. I'll ask the questions. I want to know, because sometimes our children will harbor that information and they'll try to deal with it on their own. But hey, we got to dig in and be parents in this hour. So I don't know, but y'all look into it. HB1 in Georgia passed 93 to 62, eliminating free speech zones on college campuses, but it also affects K through 12. The next one, you want to move with the second one, bro?
Yep, go right ahead. What's the next one? Is it the divisive concepts?
In a way, HB
Racial history.
HB 1084. HB 1084 talks about teaching racial history. Now, this is interesting. This is very interesting.
Very.
It says the House General Assembly also heard HB 1084, which would prevent teachers from promoting divisive concepts. Now, if you all are paying attention, do y'all see the language that they're using? Divisive concept. Yep. That's interesting, because divisive by definition means tending to cause disagreement or hostility between people. Something divisive means alienating, estranging, isolating. It's something that's schismatic, something that's disharmonious, or even discordant. So they're saying the same stuff that they've been teaching for over 100 years or more is now divisive. And it's divisive because the more that we expose about our history, or the more that we demand real facts, the more we begin to expose the fallacies and the things that they say and have done. And now that we're beginning to challenge Christopher Columbus, now we're challenging, where was, slavery. With all of that, we came over here on boats, and the more we dig and the more books we find, we never left here. And so there's so much, not all of us, the majority of us were already here. And so all this information that we're beginning to find, when it even gets back to Egypt, every time they dig, the deeper they dig, the blacker it gets. But the more that we're able to absolutely have these conversations about, and this dialogue about, now they're calling that divisive. That's crazy to me. Before I even walk into this information, they're already using code words. Divisive, alienating, isolating. The only people in our history books that have been alienated and isolated is people of color. The only people that have been had the schism and called discordant and called disharmonious were the Indians, and were the Aboriginals. Everywhere they went, the people who they encountered, they always had something negative to say about the people they were getting ready to conquer. Everybody else was bad and evil except them. But now, when we got facts, to counteract the lies that they've told, now it's divisive. This is funny, but I don't know what you think about that. Before we even dig into it, what do you think about that language, divisive concepts?
Well, that's always used. I mean, that's one thing that we here in the business community here is that when we start talking, Black business, Black this, Black that, it gets to be divisive because it's beyond what our counterparts are comfortable with. As long as you're within Black History Month, it's all good. But once you start celebrating Black culture in a way that challenges the norm, it becomes a problem. And when we promote trying to support or bring exposure to the disparities, then it becomes a problem. It becomes divisive. And I always challenge, divisive for who? I didn't think it was divisive. The point is that it sounds like truth to me. Just like Shamanti says, that the blacker it gets, it's divisive because it's us. I mean, that's the reason that it becomes divisive, because people get sensitive when we start talking Black issues, when we start talking inequitable situations. And that's nothing new, especially here in Deep South. And I think we have to do a better job of supporting what's Black. We got to do a better job of pushing that narrative that, the blacker it gets, the more passionate we are about it, the more that we are attracted to it. And we're not letting go of that, because bills like this only, as somebody said in the narrative there for that article, it only muffles teachers, and it puts fear into teachers as to what they should respond to and even how. And so it goes back to some of the things that we talked about with the binary or non-binary gender, is that it causes more confusion than fixes a problem. The only people that it seems to fix a problem for are the ones who don't necessarily understand Black culture. And when we start talking Black culture outside of the place where it's comfortable, i.e. African-American history, i.e. Black History Month, as long as with that it's under that guise of African-American history, then it's okay. But once we start looking at traditional history as told and challenging it, that's why, we don't even have a full consensus across these United States about Christopher Columbus, or even Columbus Day for that matter. If it was that easy to recognize the atrocities that he caused, then the whole country would wipe out, that day and be on one accord. If everyone understood the atrocities of even in the southern region here across the states, how detrimental it is to have to sit in a classroom and hear about Confederate this, Confederate that, General Sherman this person, General Forrest, all that we have to hear. Every historical figure that we have to hear about and learn subconsciously, because when you go up to Atlanta area and we go to the National Park of Stone Mountain, Georgia, we're celebrating the carving of Confederate generals or soldiers, but we don't even realize that when we're little. We're astonished by this big piece of granite, but we are still celebrating a lost cause of the Confederacy. And so when we bring attention to that, we got people that want to hold on to what they call their heritage. But meanwhile, we're not. What we were supposed to let go of our heritage? And so when we start to uplift our heritage and put it on a higher platform, or in the case where I was saying before, celebrate ourselves, celebrate Black business, try to bring equity to the situation, it gets to be divisive.
Yeah. I want to push back on something that you said, but I totally agree with what you were saying about the games that they play. But the one thing I want to push back on is the fact that, a lot of times we say that they don't understand Black culture, and the more I begin to look at how they fashion civilizations, how they fashion history, how they've adjusted our culture, they understand us very well. If they've been able to hold us down for centuries and thousands of years, since the early 1400s, that we don't talk about what happened before 1492. We don't talk about how there was a great war between them and the Moors, and they ended up winning one of those wars, which gave up access to this side of the dang world that before then they didn't even have access to anything west of that peninsula, or where Africa was. They didn't even go anywhere west of that. So in the early 1400s, that's how Christopher Columbus got access. They understand us. If you read the memoirs of Christopher Columbus, and you'll begin to see how they study people before they infiltrate and before they take over, or before they pull the Trojan horse. They know us. They know our music, which is why they changed it. They changed the megahertz of music. That's why music from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s sounds totally different than music from the 90s and above. Because they actually shifted the megahertz of the music. They changed the music scale because it has a psychological effect. It's easier to manipulate your mind with the new megahertz. They understand the food that we eat. They understand our ways. They understand the pathology of us. Eugenics was a huge thing. They understand us. The fact is that they have refused to acknowledge or implement anything that resembles Black history. We get the Black History Month, but then they give us to people who to celebrate.
That's right.
You see what I'm saying? They know how to do it. They studied us. They have studied our DNA, Henrietta Lacks. They understand us. They get it, which is why they have been in power for centuries, thousands of years, ages. But it's almost as if we're still trying to figure out ourselves. And that is the chess move that we have yet been able to figure out. They know us so well. They have trapped us in so many different directions that we can't even see our own way out. And I think that has a lot to do with how they're able to throw this stuff, in our communities, and or with businesses, or with economy, or schools, or funding, or whatever. They know that they have conditioned us psychologically to accept crumbs as a 5-course meal, generation after generation. They know it. And I think at this point, we're going to have to start waking up and understanding, like Shamanti said, we're going to have to start our own schools. It's about to be a reality. And I totally agree that we need to do that. But I just wanted to add that point that we're going to have to start acknowledging the fact that our enemy ain't as stupid as we think he is. He's very strategic. Very strategic. Look how they're shifting the minority. Right before our eyes, Asians and our brown brothers and sisters are rising above us in status. We're about to become the minority, the real minority. We're about to replace our brown brothers and sisters. We're about to be at the bottom completely if we don't wake up and understand that there is an agenda after us, and it starts in the mind. So again, our racial history is divisive because they're trying to dodge. They're playing dodgeball with accepting the fact that they have lied, and now they're caught red-handed. That's just my opinion when you come about this divisive concepts of racial history. But I hope I didn't talk your ear off, but I feel like I had to get that out.
I think it's a good segue even to the last bill, because both of those that we'll get onto this last one, but both of these really strike me as a way to how do you respond to these in the schools? Because there's a loophole in here. If you're going to challenge the teachers because there are divisive concepts in schools, then as a parent, then I would say that we need to be well equipped and willing to challenge what's being taught in schools then, and use the loophole that what my child is learning is divisive.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's genius. That goes back to what you were saying earlier about the dog and the animals and the asexuality. I was just thinking about the other day. I don't know if you follow him. What's his name? The first guy to be drafted out of high school, played for the. What was his name? I can't think of his name right now. But anyway, he was saying that with all of this stuff going around and people being able to kind of shift their gender when they get ready, it's the same concept. I think we need to start shifting this thing in our favor. And he was saying, all right, well, since y'all can do this, he said, I'm just going to go to the truck and put a wig on and then come back and say, well, I identify as a woman and now I want to press charges. And do you know legally that's something that could possibly happen just because you've now taken their concept and twisted it back on them? So I think that's genius what you were saying, to go back and say, well, I believe this is divisive because X, Y, Z. And so that might be something. Yeah, I think that's something, family, that you all might want to, to consider, because it is a good move. Because
I mean, we'll have to do that, in that way, capacity full-fledged. Because I mean, if we're getting fed, with the example of Christopher Columbus or any other person in history, I think one of the areas that I saw in the article that supported what divisive concepts are, includes teaching that one race is superior. I think it's quite odd that they actually put that in the bill, that divisive concepts include teaching that one race is superior. I mean, that's generally what the main history has done in totality, is it puts one race that seems to have been superior the whole while. So if that's the case and you feel that way, then you need to challenge your school system and say that.
I think that would be only right. But I think that they did. I think they brought that racial superiority out because of the biology and the genetic factor. Knowing that,
of course, yeah.
I think.
But how often does a black family or a black father, mother go to the school and tout that, or even say that I want my child to learn this?
Exactly. So I mean, another great point. Like who's going out there saying, yeah, I want you to teach that black people no, we're not doing that. We just want our equal share of the truth of our place in history.
Right.
But that's such a hard task for them to accept, because if they do that, then they have to uncover all the other lies that they've told.
Yep.
Which then just basically throws their historical narrative down the drain and in the trash. Because if we listen to the stories of those that were alive during that time, they told a totally different story than what we were reading in these books. You know what I'm saying? We're starting to find out a lot of these revolutionaries and all of these different little wars that popped off on the East during the Louisiana Purchase, and before that even happened, when it was basically a lot of the East Coast. I mean, there was a lot of uprisings that happened. There were so many slave revolts that happened where they were killing their masters and they were killing their children and taking over the place. That happened a lot, but we didn't hear that.
Don't hear.
All we heard is that we lived in servitude and we were happy to be slaves, and we were out singing Negro spirituals. And then when we got out of line, Mr. Tom put us back in place, and all, what I'm saying, like we were completely subjective to these people, people who were known to be warriors for thousands of years. All of a sudden decided that they were just going to be these docile, subtle people. I knew that was a lie when I first heard it. I knew it was, but I never could really make sense of it. When I first heard it as a kid, I was like, why would they just not fight? Like not do nothing? and I look at my neighborhood, I look at my family, I look at my friends, like we all fighters. You know what I'm saying? Even in this invisible oppression, like some people say there is no systemic race, whatever. Even in this country that we live in, knowing that there are invisible walls and ceilings that exist in certain situations, we just have to learn how to get around them. We know that we're fighters.
Right.
So we killing each other left and right. So I mean, come on. I don't get it, but you're right. That's another game they play to make it.
Let's use that as the segue then for this last one here for the parental review and challenge of school curricula.
All right, let's see. HB 1178. Lawmakers in the House also debated HB 1178, which would create a parents' bill of rights in schools. The bill, also sponsored by Bonner, would allow parents to review curriculum taught to their children and file complaints if they disagree with the content. So, well, let me finish. Supporters of the bill said that it was necessary to increase parents' involvement in schools, but critics said it could hinder teachers' ability to effectively teach their students. This one passed 98-68. This is interesting to me. Very interesting. Because we saw HB1. We saw, what was the second one? HB 1084. We saw about, them eliminating free speech zones in colleges, which we did see does affect K through 12. We told you it was going to trickle down. Then 1084 came along, and it was talking about teaching of the racial history, saying that, they're going to try to limit these divisive concepts. Again, racial isolation, estranging, all this other stuff. Don't want nobody to feel like they're more than the other, which where that's coming from. And now we've got this 1178 that's saying that they want to give parents Bill of Rights. So you actually seemingly are putting it into place and saying this can happen. But as you were saying earlier, Brother Black, that there are some Bill of Rights that can support us who don't agree with it.
Yep.
So there is not a lost cause, but then the question to me would be, what are these rights? Because I think that is what's going to really paint the whole picture, or the panoramic picture, for us to really understand, what source, what support, what leg do we have to stand on with these Bill of Rights? Because what if some of those rights that we want to express aren't listed in that Bill of Rights? And so it's yeah.
Here's a little bit more, because I did see that one a few weeks ago, or actually several weeks ago now, because I think this came out like in the beginning of the year. The Parents' Bill of Rights would give parents the right to review curriculum and other instructional material during the first 2 weeks of every 9-week grading period in public schools. Principals or superintendents who receive a request for information from a parent would have 3 working days to provide it. I'm gonna tell you right now, this one, I'd be surprised if this one lasts a long term, because everybody, even if we didn't do anything, I think a lot of people are going to submit requests to see basically what is being taught to the schools, which some of the opposition to this bill speaks about. That's going to create a disaster in the effectiveness of the teacher, because the teacher is going to have to answer to all these requests. And so is now the Board of Education or the leadership administration at the school as well. Yep. And I say, as I said before, this is where I really make my point of, we need to exercise the heck out of this bill. Then we need to make sure that all of the curriculum, it says, what I said before, at the first 2 weeks of every 9-week period, I'm going to be requesting to see what the curriculum is going to be taught. And if I got a problem with it, then I'm going to actually raise that flag to the school, because we need to treat this the same way that they are. They want to see basically, or I should say, not they, I should say proponents of this bill want to see basically what teachers are teaching to the students. Parents want to see basically what is being taught to their children. And if anything smells like critical race theory, they want to oppose it and send it up for review. So we should do the same thing and question the same way to our rights, our parent bill of rights, if you will, and go through the curriculum and challenge what we do not like in the curriculum just as well. But it's going to halt the school process basically, and I don't see it lasting.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation. The fact that I think it's going to overwhelm the school system in a way that's going to allow them to see the fallacy. Like this is too much. You know what I'm saying? Like we not need to back up and try something else, because if you put this in place, you are going to inundate those teachers. You are going to make them feel overwhelmed to have to explain themselves. At that point, I think it makes me ask the question: how much liberty do the teachers have with
Correct.
teaching the content? You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's going to play a great deal as well, because if they have to be, if they have to follow the teaching curriculum, whatever they provide, line by line, precept by precept, it's going to be a problem. So then the question goes, are they provided the full curriculum, or are they able to kind of take certain angles? You see what I'm saying? Like this is gonna start us getting us down all these caveats and these different what ifs and these one offers and stuff like that, which is going to be more problematic. So I don't know. I mean, it's like they gave us this freedom, but then they gave us this protection. But there's so many different pockets to making this a real seamless operation. I think it's going to be more problems than it is going to be solutions, and at the end, because or this could be a wake up call for us who would like to have charter schools or private schools or home schools to give us the liberty to really exercise that option. I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's going to circle, or not circle. I think it's going to almost trap a few people in the system who cannot afford private school education, or have that ability to do the homeschooling. And then it's also going to free another section who have that capability, to pull their children out. So I think it's going to be a greater divide. I think this is where we're going to start seeing a lot of what are those schools? What are those schools? Montessori schools, private school, home school, stuff like that. A lot of those are going to start popping up in communities. So I think it's an opportunity for us who have that ability, who have that know-how, to start really searching out opportunities. Montessori, thank you. Shout out to Brother Lucas. He would definitely help us with that. But definitely,
Lucas.
Yeah, definitely something that we need to consider. I think I don't know if you've heard of Derek Grace before, right?
Yes.
The guy with all the tattoos on his face and the gold. He said something the other day that really changed my mind. He said that when we go to work, most of the time we're too busy focused on promotions. We're too busy focused on getting another degree. He said when you go to a job, you go there to steal every piece of intellectual property that they offer, because your plan should be a plan to exit.
Yeah.
So I think any teacher, any counselor, any principal, anybody that can see that our children need better, I think it's incumbent upon us and as leaders, and us as tradesmen, and us as professionals, to start looking for the future of our children and begin to establish our own agenda and start pulling all of this intellectual property away from our current workspaces, so we can start creating something on the side for our children that can really grow into something where we can completely detach and pull our children out and have our own schools. That's just my opinion. But I mean, we've got professionals on, we've got educational professionals that are here with us. I mean, what do y'all think? Do y'all think that's even possible? Are we dreaming too big, or are we just not looking far enough down the road and saying that it can happen? It's just going to be a process. Y'all help us with that, because I think this is something that we need to talk about for our children, because the next 10 years, it's just going to get worse, especially if they have especially if we go through another lockdown like China's having right now. They can't leave. They can't go grocery shopping. They can't go to the park. They can't go nowhere. They can't open their doors. That's what they're doing in China right now. And so we're going to have to just, really start looking at other options, how we can detach from this society who's constantly dodging the ball and not want to take accountability and give us reparations or whatever. But Shamanti says, yes, it's definitely an opportunity. I really want to get together with some people and start a Black Homeschool Association around here. Everyone can teach something. Exactly. I mean, it can't get any clearer than that. Brother Samuel says we don't have an option. It's something we have to do. See what I'm saying? This is something that we're going to have to really make a serious part of who we are and what we do. And I think it starts with people that have that professional education, that professional experience, like Brother Lucas, the individuals that have that experience, like Shamanti or any of the other teachers that we have, Dr. Best, and a lot of these other individuals that can provide something. I think now is the time. I think we need to start looking and see that the writing is already on the wall, and we need to respond quickly. Shamanti says it can happen. It needs to start small. Yeah,
I think just like with with our Black business community, what has to happen, either you said it or I think you said it, but you alluded to the fact that one of the options, whether it's not going to happen or whether we just can turn it on, or there is a process that we have to go to. And that's why I'll emphasize that we have to understand that if we don't actually move in that direction, it will never happen. And that's the same thing I keep saying about Black businesses getting together and moving forward. But in this case, we have to understand that there is a process that takes place, and whether or not we form some sort of union of teachers to move in that direction, to start getting the necessary paperwork, starting to file for some sort of formation of a nonprofit to be able to sustain ourselves as a school, to be able to get grants and funding for that, because that's all out there. It can happen. But I think that what we need to be able to do is actually knock off some of those low-hanging fruit actions that have to take place for it to be a solid execution.
Yeah. That's true. I absolutely agree with that. I think that would definitely be the groundwork that needs to happen. It's just got to be. I don't know why it is we struggle so much. With the synergy of melanin. I don't know what it is. I don't know why it's such a struggle. I don't know. I don't know. But again, I think it's a part of the program. I think it's a part of us.
It is the programming.
Yeah. I think it's that for sure. And I think we just need to get back to. I know it's shallow, but I think it's something that we all can accept, is the fact that I think we need to start reattaching ourselves to people who look like us. I think we need to look over, what religion you are, look over where you come from, look over. I think that is the programming that we have fallen subject to, and we've forgotten, that we are family by biology and by blood. I think we need to look past all of these, extraneous foolishness in many cases, and just love on people that look like us, and be willing to partner and hold hands and go to war with people who look like us, so we can have a united front. They don't all agree with each other.
And stop thinking that we need validation by being in their process.
Right.
That's a lot of what goes on, because of this. I hate to do this all the time, but the business person in me always does this, but that's the same concerns, arguments, and needs that we have when it comes to our Black businesses. Just like Shamanti said, we basically have this taboo of not trusting each other to the fullest extent, but yet and still the person that has subjected us to slavery historically, and the person that probably doesn't have your best interest at heart, at the end of the day, you'll go spend your money, you'll go partner with that person, knowing, or at least having some sort of intuition that you're not getting the same equity as they are, but yet and still will do business with that person or that group of people.
Right. And it's almost out of like a default programming. We'll jump to that.
But I like what you said earlier about the synergy of melanin.
Yeah, it exists. It definitely exists, and it exists when we go to. We can play a T.I. song in the middle of Africa, and we can play a T.I. song in the middle of Europe, and we're going to get the same response. You know, it's going to be that same synergy that we all can connect, and we can go to London right now and not open our mouth, and nobody would know we're not from London. You see what I'm saying? We resemble each other that much. We are so much in tune with each other when we're halfway across the world. But when we open our mouth, that's when we start with our biases and personal prejudices. And I think those are the things we need to get rid of and start just pulling it back to family. Let them, hey, all right, that's fam there. Let them prove that they're not a part of family, but accept it. I think that's a good step for us to start. Because we can garner so much information and so much momentum just by being more receptive of our brothers and sisters. But we got a long way to go. We got a lot of stuff we got.
Let me read through this. Going back to touch with this. Where are we on the parental review here? Because the excerpt that I read was just a piece of the process, and I know we're going to have to revisit this as this bill permeates through Georgia and gets executed, and people start hitting the fan and following the steps, and we're left behind because we quite frankly do not understand the steps. So I'm going to read it to you the way that it's written here, that the Parents' Bill of Rights would give parents the right to review curriculum and other instructional material during the first 2 weeks of every 9-week grading period in public schools. Principals or superintendents who receive a request for information from a parent would have 3 working days to provide it. Now it continues here. If the principal or superintendent is unable to share the information within that time frame, they would have to provide the parent a written description of the material and a timeline for its delivery not to exceed 30 days. Parents not satisfied with the local school's decision on a request could appeal to the school district and beyond that to the state. Period.
So I believe if you can, bro, possibly add that link if you can. If it's a link that you can add. One thing I've learned from Dr. Umar Johnson is when you go to schools and you begin to request things by law, it's good to provide them with the actual print of the law, because the majority of them don't know themselves. They don't know themselves. And so when you bring it to them, most of them will have to take it to their principal or to their superintendent, because they don't even know.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm kind of living in that right now. Not to give off a whole lot, because typically, people listen on these things beyond what we're recording, but I'm experiencing that to a degree right now, where people are trying to decipher a federal regulation, but they really haven't read in totality the federal regulation, but then they're interpreting what they saw and putting out that this is what the regulation says. And if you do not read it to its entirety, and then, like you say, present it back to them as this is your own document right here that the federal government has given, but you're trying to tell me it says something different. No, I've read it. And so this is how this shall go. And so I think what you're saying there is very similar in that fashion, that we need to become very close to these bills and understand them, whether we can benefit from them, we can move in a chess-like fashion, but we need to make sure that we're not on the losing end. Don't feel like a victim. And if we operate in a way that we execute the same plots, the same steps to voice our opinion about certain curriculum, divisive content. I mean, it's been divisive for the whole while that we've been in school. So we need to start exercising the same right under these bills and voicing our opinions.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we see this every day with our law enforcement. We see it every day. There's so much that they don't know. And it's right there in writing. Many a times, if you pull it out during that discourse, they'll get upset and want to arrest you, and give all these secondary charges, resisting arrest and interfering with an investigation, which is absolutely false. But the fact that when you call them out on the truth and you've got it and you're saying it by the letter, They don't understand it. So there's going to be some challenges with this because interpretation of law also a lot of the times can be a huge hurdle in that process. So learn it, like Brother Black said, learn it, get familiar with it, teach it to your children so they can be aware when things happen in class or in school, and they will know their rights because it will do nothing but benefit them in the long run. So this is an opportunity for us to really, really, really become real involved in our children's lives, not just for now, but for the next decade or two to come. So, yeah, we've got a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do, my brother. But did you have? Let's see. Do we have any other comments? Because we're getting ready to get up out of here. Let's see. Oh, by the way, HB 1178 passed 98 to 68. So again, overwhelmingly accepted by the members of the Senate. I'm sorry, the House. So I don't know. I mean, we've got a lot of work. There's a lot happening behind the closed doors. Because what my question is, when was this passed? I want to know. March the 5th, 2022. March 5th. So there's something coming after this because they are changing some. And I want to share this with you. We're going to get ready to log off. Look into the laws that are changing for the 2022-2023 school year. If your child is in special ed, or if your child has an IEP, or if your child is struggling in a certain subject next year, they're going to be able to recommend your child by their own recommendation. Your child can be recommended to IEP or to special ed, and it can happen without going through some of those other loopholes you had to go through before. That child, what they're basically going to do is if your child struggled this year, that teacher's testimony can dictate if your child is going to be entered into IEP or special ed next year, which is completely different than what has been in the past. So think about what's happening here. Just by the opinion of a teacher who may be divisive, let's use their words, may be divisive, and may think differently about the progression of your child and say, nah, they need to be in special ed when that child might just need some summer school stuff. And so, there are some things that you can do moving forward. If your child is struggling this year, go ahead and request all of the records, all of the medical records, everything from your child. It can be done. Do it before this month is over. Please get that request so you can get all of the documents. So if your child is having some issues next year, you've got the documents to prove their all of their progression up until that point. So they can't add anything, they can't not include stuff. And so you can really advocate for your child. So make sure you get all of your child's records in your hand way before the end of the school year. If your child is struggling in a subject, provide language that you're going to have your child in summer school, that you're going to be proactive. Because if your child is struggling in math or struggling in English or whatever, and they don't have anything on the books about, what are you doing on your end for your child, that child's previous teacher can say they need to repeat by their testimony. So it's not just all of this other stuff with this free speech and divisive concepts and all this, but they are attacking the very psychological status of children, to the point where they could be in a regular classroom all through middle school, but when they get to high school, now they want to put them in IEPs and special ed. So that is also a tactic too that we've got to watch out for. So we got to keep our heads up, keep our eyes open, because there is an agenda, but we've got to set our own. But that's all I got to say, brother. But Shamonte did leave a point. She said a white teacher who doesn't know Black culture will have all our kids in SPED. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I've told parents over and over again, the school is nothing but a rendition of the church. They put the teacher in front, they have the children looking at the teacher, and they want y'all to be quiet and listen and teach you and learn what I'm teaching. It's the same situation. But the difference is you can't get up and throw your finger up and walk outside. Now you got to sit down and listen to this and let them and you got to hold yourself together and hear this stuff. So it's coming, y'all. It's definitely coming. Said, be careful with the new Georgia gun law. We didn't even get to that tonight. Signed by Governor Kemp today, also concealed carry. We were going to talk about that, brother. We didn't even get to it tonight. We may jump on another time to talk about that new gun law, which is a doozy. We'll talk about that another time. But somebody says, and keep up with your IEPs and make sure they get their accommodations if they have an IEP. Yes. Also, one thing with the IEP, real quick, if you are not satisfied with your children's progress for IEPs, as a parent, you do have the legal right to write a letter to that school board, that principal, and that school psychologist. They can all be the same letter telling them that you are not satisfied with the school's curriculum that they provided an IEP, and that child should get funding or access to free tutoring, other free programs to that will also, what's the word, to not necessarily substitute, but I guess to add it on as an additional program to what the IEP is already providing. When your child gets that IEP status, that school gets money. And that money is supposed to be used for these additional services for these children. So if you're not happy with your child's progression, you feel like your child is still struggling, you need to call another IEP meeting and tell them, I'm not happy with this. What other options do we have? Don't let this school year pass and your child IEP wasn't successful. Put it on the books, put it on paper, start the paper trail now, because after this year, it's going to be a different school system that we have ever seen, and it's not going to be pretty, especially for people of color. So let's get on the ball, family. Let's do our thing. I'm out, brother. I'm done. Yeah, I'm passionate about this stuff because I had to deal with this myself, so I know.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely. But yeah, man, we about to get up out of here, man. Brother, you have any last comments? Great show, great commentary.
I mean, very informative tonight, and hopefully, the replays, the sharing, happens so that these type of informative discussions can spread. Because I'm pretty sure we're not keeping up with this stuff. I mean, as I said before, the culture of South Georgia, Lowndes County, is much different than other areas. And if we do not be careful, if we do not become advocates for one another, whether that's business, education, our children, each other, we're gonna slide right down to the bottom, as Brother Gold already said, as far as other minority groups, because clearly Black and Black agenda has always been a fearful topic, as far as as they say, fear of a Black planet. Black nature has always been a topic of caution and fear, quite frankly, to be able to exercise power in our given rights. But at the same time, that's why there always has been tactics to keep us in check, if you will. And we've just got to play in a different manner. We've got to play in a way that is not fearful, not with concern of our network being destroyed or our livelihood being destroyed. I mean, our ancestors put up with a whole lot more, but still pushed back and brought themselves together collectively. And I don't know what happened over, decades and centuries, but over the last several decades, we have become shell-shocked. And I use that term frequently nowadays to make that point. We've got to get out of the shell-shock nature and really understand what's going on politically beyond, our districts. Not only getting involved in our districts, and I commend those who are at the administrative level, at the board levels of our schools, those that are aspiring to be board members. Shout out to Dr. Sheila Thomas. She is running for board member for Lowndes County School System. As you are aware, if you should be, that Lowndes County Board does not have any African Americans on the board. So she would be one of the only ones on there if we elect her. So we need to make sure that we get collective push to get her on the board. So anyway, the point is that we've got to be, that unapologetic when we talk about really progressing the agenda for African Americans. And it's not conspiratorial. It's not a conspiracy driven type thing. It's really trying to get the equity that we should have had for centuries and decades at this point. So we just got to get behind this whole African American push. But other than that, that's really all I have. I enjoy shows like this because we are informing those that are listening and watching, and at the same time, it sparks some thoughts and probably some seeds of action in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Bro, I ain't even gonna add nothing to that. There's nothing else to add to that. I mean, that was said perfectly, and I totally agree. I just want all of us to make that concerted effort, to make your family, the center, the real center of your life for the days to come. Appreciate all of y'all for logging on, Brother Cedric. Thank you, brother. Still, I think, what is his mantra? Chopping and chanting, chanting and chopping, something like that. Shamanti, thank you so much for being a support as always. Kiana, thank you so much for all of your comments. All of you others that are watching that may not have commented, thank you so much. We really appreciate your support. If you'd like to get more information, you can send us an email at theblackandthebold@gmail.com. Chopping and chanting, I told you. theblackandthebold@gmail.com. We also have our Cash App that we'll also list up for you, which is $, the Black and the Bold. And then, of course, we have our IG page, Black and the Bold. But you all need to make sure that you come and tap in. We got a lot to talk about. We need your support. We want to hear your comments. We want to hear your feedback because we want to make this about family because that's what it's really all about. But listen, we got to get up out of here. Thank you all again. I'm going to give you all a my Easter speech, and we're going to get right about this spot. Listen, tonight, I want to give you all a quote from Zig Ziglar. It says, "If you are not willing to learn, no one can help you. If you are determined to learn, no one can stop you." Let me say that again. If you are not willing to learn, no one can help you. But if you are determined to learn, no one can stop you. I've been reading this book. It's called The Compound Effect. It's by a man by the name of Darren Hardy. And in this book, he shares a really important nugget that I want to share with y'all tonight. He said, most of us spend $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 on an education that we can't even remember many of the things and concepts we learned the year after. And most of the time we run around our life trying to regurgitate thoughts or trying to remember thoughts or concept that we learned years ago. And we still find ourselves kind of fumbling through life. And he said, many of the times we're fumbling through life because we don't have the proper knowledge. And I want to encourage you because he said, most people don't understand that if instead of you going to get a college degree to prove that you've been educated, he said, if you learn how to make your car your classroom, if you listen to educational content, self-development content, financial content, whatever, consistently for about a year, he said that you would have the knowledge that's equivalent to a 4-year degree. In other words, it's incumbent upon us to take our education in our own hands. We've talked about, all the new bills in Georgia that have been released, and we know that there's a tack behind that, there's an agenda behind that. But at the end of the day, we've got to want to learn for ourselves. Because Albert Einstein said, education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think. And I think that's why many of us are consistently following and falling at the whim of what society brings to us, because we take what they taught us, the indoctrination they taught us, and think that's supposed to help us, when in fact we should educate ourselves so we could think for ourselves. I want to encourage you all tonight that for the next year, make your car your classroom. Listen to self-help books, whether through YouTube or audio books or Amazon or whatever you use. Find some content to feed your mind so that you can learn to think for yourself. Because with all of this going on, this huge agenda that's after us, it will work if we're not thinking for ourselves. We are a royal priesthood. We're a chosen generation. We're a peculiar people. who have been destined for great things. But you've got to make up in your mind to choose this day what your future will be. I love you all, and I thank you all for being here with us tonight. Remember, if you can't think for yourself, there's someone out there with an agenda who's willing to do it for you. Till next time, peace, love, and light. We'll see y'all soon. We out.